On April 6th, 2026, at exactly 6:41 in the evening Eastern Time, 4 human beings did something no person had ever done before. They watched the Earth disappear, not a sunset, not a moonrise. The entire planet Earth, the only home humanity has ever known, slowly, silently sank below the edge of the moon, and the universe swallowed it whole. And the photograph they took at that moment broke the internet. Welcome to one of the most breathtaking images ever captured by human hands. Welcome to EarthSat, taken from the far side of the moon during NASA's Artemis II mission 2 weeks ago. And if you haven't seen it yet, or if you saw it and didn't fully understand what you were looking at, then stay with me, because the story behind this image is even more extraordinary than the image itself. Let's set the scene. NASA's Artemis II mission launched on April 1st, 2026, from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. On board the Orion spacecraft were 4 astronauts: Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialist Christina Koch, and Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen. Their mission was not to land on the moon. It was a free return flyby, a 10-day journey that would take them out to the moon, swing them around its far side using lunar gravity, and then slingshot them back toward Earth. It was the first time human beings had traveled to the moon's vicinity since the final Apollo mission in 1972, more than 50 years, half a century of waiting. And on April 6th, the waiting paid off in a way that nobody could have fully predicted. As the Orion spacecraft swept around the far side of the moon, the side that never faces Earth, the side that no human eye had ever directly observed from such close range before this mission, the crew prepared for something called a planned loss of signal. This is what happens when a spacecraft passes behind the moon. The moon's own body blocks all radio communication between the spacecraft and Earth. Mission control goes silent. The crew goes silent. For 40 minutes, 4 human beings were completely alone on the other side of the moon, with no contact with anyone on Earth. No voice, no data, no connection to the 7 billion people they left behind. And in those final moments before the signal cut out, at 6:41 p.m. Eastern Time, just 3 minutes before the communications blackout began, astronaut Victor Glover and his crewmates looked out the window of the Orion spacecraft and saw something that stopped them cold. The Earth was setting over the moon's horizon. Think about what that means for a moment. We are all familiar with sunsets here on Earth. And we watch the sun dip below the horizon, and we call it beautiful. But what these 4 astronauts witnessed was incomparably more profound. They watched the entire Earth, every continent, every ocean, every city, every person they had ever loved, slowly slide behind the curved, cratered edge of the moon. The photograph they captured shows a crescent Earth, partially lit by sunlight, with the bright blue of Australia and the Pacific Ocean visible on the daylit side, and the dark shadow of nighttime consuming the other half. And in the foreground, the lunar surface stretches out in stunning detail. Ancient craters, overlapping basins, ridges, and peaks formed over billions of years, while the living blue world behind it shrinks toward the horizon and vanishes. This image is called EarthSat, and it went viral the moment NASA released it. Social media erupted. Within hours, the image had been shared millions of times across every platform. People who had never once cared about a space mission stopped scrolling and just stared. The comment sections were full of one thing: silence dressed up as words. People write things like, "I've never felt so small and so grateful at the same time." People write, "I don't know why I'm crying." Because that is what this photograph does. It doesn't just show you space. It shows you yourself, from a distance you have never been able to see yourself from before. It shows you the smallness and the fragility and the impossible beauty of the only world in the known universe confirmed to carry life. Now here is the historical context that makes this image hit even harder. In December 1968, a NASA astronaut named Bill Anders was orbiting the moon aboard Apollo 8, and he looked out the window and saw the Earth rising above the lunar horizon. He grabbed a camera and took a photograph that became one of the most famous images in human history. That photo is called Earthrise. For 58 years, Earthrise has been the defining image of Earth, as seen from the moon, the blue marble hanging in the darkness, rising above the gray, desolate lunar surface. It changed how humanity thought about itself. It launched the modern environmental movement. It made people realize, viscerally, that this planet is fragile and finite and worth protecting. The EarthSat image from Artemis II is the next chapter of that story, where Earthrise showed the Earth coming up, EarthSat shows the Earth going down, disappearing, vanishing behind the moon's edge. And the emotional weight of that difference is enormous. Earthrise was a moment of arrival, of wonder, of seeing home from afar. EarthSat is something else. It is a moment of departure. It is the moment when Earth is no longer visible, when the crew truly became alone in the universe in a way that no human had experienced since the Apollo era, and the photograph captures that moment with a clarity and a stillness that is almost unbearable. Victor Glover, the Orion spacecraft's pilot, described the experience later in a way that will stay with you. He said the Earth was so bright out there, hanging in space, and then the moon just swallowed it. He talked about the silence that followed, the 40 minutes of radio blackout, of complete disconnection from everything familiar, of floating in the darkness on the other side of a world that has no air, no life, no sound. He said human minds should not have to go through that experience, and yet he would not have traded it for anything. Christina Koch, the mission specialist, radioed back the moment communications were restored after the blackout ended. Her first words were simple. She said it was so great to hear from Earth again. Those words hit differently when you understand what she had just been through. 40 minutes of total silence on the other side of the moon with no link to home except the fading memory of that crescent Earth sinking below the horizon. And then the voices came back. But the Earthsat image was not the only extraordinary thing that happened during those 7 hours. While the crew flew around the far side of the moon, they also witnessed a solar eclipse that lasted nearly 54 minutes. From their position in space, the moon appeared large enough to completely block the sun, creating a total solar eclipse. That the astronauts watched with eclipse glasses, the first time eclipse protection glasses had ever been used on the moon. The images they captured of the eclipsed sun show a dark lunar disk surrounded by a glowing halo with stars visible around it that are normally washed out by daylight. The science team is still studying whether the halo effect came from the sun's corona, from something called zodiacal light, or from a combination of both. The crew also photographed the lunar far side itself in unprecedented detail. These are regions that no human being had ever seen directly with their own eyes before this mission. The Apollo missions flew trajectories that kept them on the near side of the moon. The side that always faces Earth. The far side remained unseen by human eyes at close range for the entire history of the space program, until April 6, 2026. Commander Reed Wiseman later said he and his crew were the first people in history to see the entire lunar far side, and that the experience was simply beyond anything he had words for. Astronaut Glover described a specific feature, the terminator, the boundary line between lunar day and night, as magical. He talked about islands of light and valleys that looked like black holes, and the way that low-angle sunlight carved the ancient terrain into something that looked almost alive. The crew photographed specific craters by name: Vavilov crater on the rim of the ancient Hertzsprung Basin, Joule crater, Birkhoff crater, Stebbins crater. They observed differences in color, brightness, and texture across the far side that will give planetary scientists years of material to analyze. The lunar surface on the far side is geologically different from the near side. Thicker crust, fewer volcanic plains, older and more heavily cratered terrain, and having human eyes and human cameras, observing it directly from just a few thousand miles away is scientifically invaluable in ways that robotic missions simply cannot replicate. At approximately 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the Orion spacecraft made its closest approach to the moon, reaching just 4,067 miles above the lunar surface. 2 minutes later, the crew broke a record that had stood for 54 years. They reached a maximum distance of 222,756 miles from Earth, the farthest any human being has ever traveled from our home planet. The previous record was held by the Apollo 13 crew, set in April 1970 during their emergency mission that barely made it home after an oxygen tank explosion. The Artemis II crew broke that record and kept going, swinging around the far side and beginning their return journey home. The mission concluded on April 10th, 2026, when the Orion capsule splashed down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California. The re-entry was one of the most closely watched moments of the mission. The heat shield had to withstand thousands of degrees of temperature as the capsule screamed back into the atmosphere at nearly 25,000 miles per hour. It performed flawlessly. The crew was recovered by the USS John P. Murtha, healthy and safe. Now here is why all of this matters beyond the photographs and the records. Artemis II was not the final destination. It was the test. It was the proof of concept. Proof that the Orion spacecraft can carry humans to the moon and back safely. Proof that the life support systems work. Proof that the crew can function in deep space during their critical communication blackout. Proof that the heat shield can survive lunar return re-entry. Every system on that spacecraft was being tested for real, with real people inside, for the first time since the Apollo era. And every system worked. This matters because of what comes next. Under the revamped Artemis program, next year's Artemis III mission is planned to practice orbital operations around Earth with a lunar lander. And Artemis IV, currently targeted for 2028, is planned to actually land astronauts near the moon's south pole, the first crewed lunar landing since Apollo 17 in December 1972. The Earthsat photograph is not just a beautiful image, it is a milestone marker on the road back to the surface of the moon. Every pixel of that image represents progress toward the moment when human footprints will again press into lunar dust. Commander Reed Wiseman captured the deeper meaning of the mission in words that deserve to be heard by everyone. He said the crew hoped that for just a moment the world would pause and remember that this is a beautiful planet, a very special place in the universe, something to be cherished. And that is exactly what happened. The Earthsat photograph stopped the world for a moment, not because it showed something alien or threatening or spectacular, in the way an explosion is spectacular, but because it showed home. It showed the only world humanity has ever lived on, from a distance that makes you feel both the profound smallness of our existence and the extraordinary luck of it, the luck of being alive on a living planet in a universe almost entirely composed of cold, dead, silent rock. The Earthrise photograph of 1968 changed the 20th century. The Earthsat photograph of 2026 may define the 21st, because it doesn't just show us where we came from, it shows us where we're going. It shows 4 human beings on the far side of the moon, looking back, watching their home disappear below the horizon, and then turning back around, pointing themselves at the stars and continuing into the dark.